I stood in the kitchen, staring at our checking account balance on my phone, and my hands literally wouldn't stop shaking. $412. That's it. $412 between us and complete financial collapse. And Mark was laughing, actually laughing, about it in the living room, like it was the funniest thing he'd heard all week. "Why are you bugging me for money?" he called out, his voice carrying that same casual, unbothered tone he'd perfected over the past few months. "I don't have any." I wanted to throw my phone across the room. Instead, I gripped the counter so hard my knuckles turned white, feeling the cold granite bite into my palms. How had we gotten here? How had we gone from the kind of couple who had a plan, who had dreams, who actually had money in the bank, to me standing alone in a kitchen that suddenly felt like a prison, watching our life implode while my husband laughed upstairs? 3 years earlier, things had been different, really different. Mark and I had bought our house in the suburbs of Columbus, Ohio, a 4-bedroom colonial with a 2-car garage and a little backyard that faced the woods. It was 2019, both of us were 32, and we genuinely believed we'd figured out the adult thing. The mortgage was manageable, our jobs were solid, and we had that specific kind of happiness that comes from checking off boxes: married, homeowner, stable, secure. I worked as a marketing manager for a pharmaceutical company, pulling in about $75,000 a year. Nothing spectacular, but comfortable. Mark worked in commercial real estate, and his income fluctuated month to month, but a good month would bring in 8 to 10 grand in commissions. A bad month would be 3 or 4. We'd learned to save during the good months, and we had nearly $60,000 in our emergency fund by early 2021. We were the kind of people who had our financial advisor, our life insurance policies, our retirement accounts all squared away. My best friend Jennifer used to joke that we were aggressively adult, and she wasn't wrong. We hosted Thanksgiving dinners. We belonged to the HOA. We had a color-coordinated kitchen. Mark would come home from work, kiss me hello, ask about my day, and we'd cook dinner together while listening to podcasts about real estate trends or productivity. It was the kind of marriage that looks perfect on Instagram, not because we were faking it, but because we genuinely liked each other. He was tall, about 6'2", with sandy brown hair and this easy confidence that had attracted me the moment we met at a networking event in 2015. He could talk to anyone. At parties, he'd work the room while I'd be content talking to 1 or 2 people, and he'd always find me at the end of the night, take my hand, and say something like, "Ready to get out of here?" He made me feel seen. Our sex life was good, not wildly passionate but consistent and affectionate. We'd go on vacations, nothing extravagant, but we'd taken a trip to Cancun one year, a cruise the next. We were planning a big anniversary trip to Europe for 2022. We had a golden retriever named Cooper, who was basically our practice child. We talked about having actual kids eventually, maybe in a couple of years. Everything felt solid. Then, in March of 2021, something shifted. Mark came home late. Not just a little late, he didn't arrive until nearly 11 p.m., which was unusual for him. He said he'd been showing properties, that the market was crazy, that deals were taking longer than expected. I'd been asleep on the couch when I heard his car in the driveway, so I didn't really question it. He came upstairs, took a shower, and got into bed without saying much. I remember thinking he smelled different. Not bad, just different, like someone else's cologne mixed with his own. "Rough day?" I'd asked, snuggling against him in the dark. "Yeah," he said, his voice flat in a way I wasn't used to. "Real estate is brutal sometimes." He rolled over, away from me, and was asleep within minutes. That was the first time I noticed something wrong. Not a red flag exactly, more like a tiny pebble in my shoe that I couldn't quite locate but knew was there. Over the next 18 months, the patterns became impossible to ignore. Mark was staying out later and later, always with the same excuse about real estate deals that somehow never closed. His phone became his third limb. He'd check it constantly, then quickly turn it face down whenever I walked into a room. When I asked him about it, he'd laugh it off. "Just work stuff, Ash. You wouldn't understand the market right now." That condescending tone, the way he made me feel stupid for even asking, became his favorite weapon. By September of 2022, I'd stopped asking questions. It hurt less that way. The money started disappearing around the same time. At first, I thought it was just normal: groceries, utilities, the usual expenses. But then I noticed withdrawals of $500 here, $1,000 there, with no explanation. When I brought it up during dinner one night, Mark just shrugged and said it was a business investment he was working on. "It's going to pay off huge," he promised. "Just trust me." I wanted to trust him. God, I wanted to believe him so badly that I ignored every instinct screaming at me that something was catastrophically wrong. By early 2023, our $60,000 emergency fund had dwindled to $30,000. By summer, it was down to $12,000. I started checking the account obsessively, watching our safety net dissolve like sugar in water. My panic attack started in July. I'd wake up at 3 in the morning, my heart racing, convinced we were going to lose the house. "Why are you bugging me for money?" Mark had said that payday in October, laughing from the living room like I'd asked him the punchline to a joke instead of where our life savings had gone. "I don't have any." That was the day I finally snapped. I walked into the living room where he was sprawled on the couch, watching football, a beer in his hand. He was still in his work clothes, expensive ones, designer jeans, a Tom Ford shirt that cost more than my monthly grocery budget. "We need to talk," I said, my voice shaking with a kind of controlled fury I'd never felt before. "Right now." "About what?" He didn't even look away from the screen. "About the $270,000 that's missing from our accounts, Mark. About where you go until midnight 3 nights a week. About the fact that you're wearing clothes that cost more than we can afford while I'm looking at our checking account balance and feeling like I'm going to throw up." That got his attention. He muted the game and turned to look at me, and for just a second, I saw something flicker across his face. Fear, maybe. Guilt. But then it was gone, replaced by that infuriating smirk. "You're being dramatic," he said. "I told you, it's an investment. It's going to—" "Stop lying to me!" I was shouting now, but I didn't care. "I've been checking the credit card statements. I've been looking at the bank transfers. There's no investment. You're just spending money on something or someone, and you won't tell me what it is." He sat up slowly, and his expression hardened into something I didn't recognize. "You've been checking my statements?" "You're my husband, Mark. We have a joint account. Of course I've been checking them. A wife gets to know where her household money is going." "That's not your money," he said, his voice cold in a way that made my stomach drop. "That's my money. I earned it. We're married. We built this life together. You know what? I'm done with this conversation." He stood up, grabbed his keys from the table, and headed toward the door. "Where are you going?" "Out. Don't wait up." He left at 8:47 p.m. on a Thursday night in October. He didn't come home until Saturday afternoon, and when he did, something had fundamentally shifted between us. He wasn't angry anymore. He was just gone, like the man I'd married had packed his bags and left someone else in his place. That's when I decided to hire a private investigator. I know how that sounds. I know it makes me sound paranoid or desperate or like a woman who couldn't let things go. But I had $12,000 left in our account, a mortgage I couldn't pay alone, and a husband who was lying to my face about something significant enough to drain our entire savings. I needed to know what I was dealing with. The investigator's name was David Chen, and he came highly recommended by Jennifer, who, thank God, had finally asked me why I looked like I hadn't slept in 6 months. I'd broken down in her kitchen, sitting at her island with a cup of coffee I couldn't drink, and told her everything. She listened without judgment and handed me his card. "Trust me," she'd said. "You need to know what you're dealing with before you make any decisions about your marriage." David worked quickly. Within 2 weeks, he had answers. He asked me to meet him at a coffee shop in downtown Columbus, away from the house, and the moment I saw his face, I knew it was bad. He handed me a manila folder across a small corner table, his expression carefully neutral. "I'm sorry," he said simply, "but you needed to know." Inside the folder were photographs, dozens of them. Mark walking into a hotel in New Albany with his hand on the small of a woman's back. The same woman, blonde, probably around 30, laughing at something he'd said. Mark kissing her forehead in what looked like a parking garage. The two of them at a restaurant I recognized, Milestone 229, where Mark had taken me for our anniversary 3 years ago. But the worst part wasn't the affair. I'd kind of known, deep down. The worst part was the bank statements David had included, showing that Mark had opened a separate account, one in just his name, and had been systematically transferring money into it for the past 18 months. Nearly $250,000. He was building a life with someone else, on our money, while I was sitting at home wondering why we couldn't afford new tires for my car. I called my sister Linda that night. She drove up from Cincinnati the next morning, took one look at the folder and said, "You need a divorce attorney." Like, immediately. Her name was Catherine Voss, and she was a shark in heels. I met with her on a Tuesday afternoon in her office on High Street, and the moment I showed her David's findings and the bank statements, her entire demeanor shifted into something lethal and professional. "This is perfect," she said, spreading the documents across her desk. "Infidelity and financial fraud. We're going to destroy him in court." The divorce papers were served to Mark on a Thursday. I'd asked Linda to stay at the house with me, and when he came home from work, from wherever he actually spent his time these days, he found the envelope waiting on the kitchen counter. I watched his face as he read it. First confusion, then anger, then something that looked almost like panic. "What the fuck is this?" he demanded, waving the papers at me. "It's over, Mark. I know about Rachel. I know about the money. I know about the hotel in New Albany, the restaurant, all of it." His face went pale. "Ashley, listen." "No, you listen. I want the house. I want half of everything in every account, including the one you thought I didn't know about. And I want full documentation of every penny you've spent on her for the last 18 months. You're going to pay for that, and Catherine is going to make sure of it." He tried to argue. He tried to charm me. He tried to tell me it was all a misunderstanding, that Rachel meant nothing, that he'd made a terrible mistake. But I was done. I was done listening to his lies, done pretending to believe him, done making excuses for a man who had systematically betrayed me while smiling in my face. The lawsuit took 8 months, 8 brutal months of depositions and document reviews, and Catherine slowly, methodically building an ironclad case against him. His lawyer kept trying to settle, but Catherine refused anything less than what we were entitled to, which, thanks to Ohio's equitable distribution laws and the documented evidence of marital misconduct and fraud, turned out to be substantially more than half. The final judgment came down in June of 2024. I got the house. I got 60% of the marital assets, about $420,000 after taxes and legal fees. Mark had to pay my attorney fees, which was another $75,000. He also had to refinance the mortgage in his name only, which meant I was free and clear of that debt. The judge read the verdict with a kind of barely concealed disgust, looking directly at Mark as she explained how infidelity combined with deliberate financial fraud constituted grounds for not just divorce, but significant financial penalty. The court finds that Mr. Brennan's actions demonstrate a pattern of deception and willful dissipation of marital assets, she said. The defendant will pay all court costs and attorney fees, and the distribution of assets will be as follows. I don't remember all of it. I remember Catherine squeezing my hand. I remember Mark's lawyer's face falling. I remember the way Mark refused to look at me. But what I remember most was walking out of that courthouse in the afternoon sunlight, Jennifer on one side and Linda on the other, and feeling like I could finally breathe again. The last time I saw Mark was at the closing for the house refinance. He looked terrible, thinner, older, like he'd aged 5 years in 8 months. Rachel had apparently left him once the money dried up. He tried to tell me that outside the title company office, as if I'd care, as if it was my responsibility to comfort him for the consequences of his own choices. "I don't want to hear it," I'd said quietly. Then I signed the final paperwork, and he was no longer my problem. It's been 6 months since that day. I kept the house, obviously. I paid off my car and my student loans. I put $30,000 into a new emergency fund and started therapy with a woman named Dr. Patricia, who specializes in betrayal trauma. I'm sleeping through the night again. I'm not having panic attacks about money. Jennifer jokes that I've gone from aggressively adult to aggressively independent, and she's not wrong. I haven't dated anyone. The idea of trusting someone else right now feels impossible, but I'm not looking for that yet. I'm learning who I am when I'm not trying to keep someone else's life together, when I'm not making excuses for someone else's behavior, when I'm just me. Cooper, our golden retriever, has noticed the difference. He follows me everywhere now, like he's making sure I'm going to be okay. Sometimes I sit on the back porch in the evening, watching the woods beyond our backyard, and I think about how close I came to losing everything. Not just the money, but my sense of self, my ability to trust my own instincts. The worst part of the whole thing wasn't the betrayal, though that was bad enough. It wasn't even the money, though losing $250,000 hurt in ways I'm still processing. It was realizing that I'd ignored red flags because I wanted to believe in the life we'd built together. I'd made myself smaller to accommodate his lies. I'd questioned my own sanity when he gaslighted me about the money. But I also know that I survived it. I got out. I got justice, not in some romantic movie way, but in the legal, documented, court-ordered way that means something. I rebuilt, and I learned that I'm stronger than I thought I was. That's something Mark can never take from me.